I
Really?
decided to split the entire anti-Semitic world into the left camp and the right camp. And to my big surprise, Ron, unbelievable surprise, I found that the right-wing anti-Semites are minority. They do exist, but they are treated as a marginal group among conservatives. But on the left-hand side, anti-Semitism was and is and probably will be mainstream, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that's why I called my book Left Anti-Semitism, because it covers maybe 95% of all acts of anti-Semitism in the world.
Hello, culminators. Today, joining us is Gary Gindler. I frequently tell you this is one of my oldest friends on the internet, and it's great. Gary and I are strangers. We know each other from X, and it came to my attention that he wrote a book, Left Anti-Semitism. And I don't think he means that anybody has left anti-Semitism. In fact, it seems to be people are mostly coming into anti-Semitism. So I wanted to talk about his book, which is coming out in 10 or so days from when we recorded this. So you'll be able to get it on Amazon. I think you probably could order it now. Yes, savings pre-order price guarantee. So Gary, welcome to the program. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ronald.
Gary, what's your story? Where do you come from? You don't sound like you have a Brooklyn accent like me.
I was born in Ukraine, lived most of my life in Russia, got PhD in 1988 in theoretical physics. I am physicist by trade, came to the United States legally, and small business owner. And after living quite a few years in the United States, I switched to be a conservative columnist for many, many outlets like American Thinker, other outlets. And then I abandoned that and started writing books. The
You
reason I
started
start,
writing a book. Yeah, what
yeah,
other books?
two, published two, and third is coming. Uh, the reason I abandoned writing articles and started writing books, it's a mess I found in the heads of my American friends. It's a complete mess to the degree that I was not able to speak freely with my neighbors, with my friends, with my relatives who came to the United States before me or after me. And I decided to approach the political ideological situation in the United States from the theoretical physics perspective. That
Is that
means,
your is that your background educationally?
yes, I am physicist by trade, and
Everyone from Russia is a physicist, right? Or an
no, some
engineer?
of them are mathematicians or philosophers.
Right.
So I am a physicist turned philosopher, and my approach was to apply some axiomatics to the political terms to make sure
Ah,
that we are on the same page, because I am constantly bombarded. Oh, Hitler is a left winger or right winger, and I am got just tired to explain what happened. And when I got completely tired, I wrote a book about the subject to definitely prove who he was, socialist or right winger conservative. And in order to achieve that, I had to go back to the real foundation of the political philosophy. Who are the right? Who are the left? Who they are? Well, everybody knows where they did came from, but nobody realized that they evolved. They evolved through the 2 centuries, and we have to trace that evolution. That evolution ended when Joseph Stalin came to power in Soviet Russia. What he did, he was also tired with all this mess in the heads of the followers, useful idiots, political opponents, he decided to reestablish once and for all who are the right, who are the left. What he did, he put himself into the center of the political universe. So
Right.
if you are slightly deviate from the Papa Stalin to the left, you are ultra leftist. If you are
So
slightly
Trotsky was the left deviationist, right?
absolutely.
And
Yes, he was.
Bukharin was the right deviationist.
Yes. That's the terminology. That's why this left and right deviation came to being. Well, originally it was used for the internal intra-communist struggle in Soviet Russia, and then it spilled into the West. It all happens in theories, but what happens in theories also in parallel with all these events in Soviet Union. Frankfurt School of Socialism packed their luggage and moved to the United States. And most of them were Stalinists, left-winger Stalinists, and they brought that idea that Stalin is as a center of political universe.
Because
And
that was I'm sorry for interrupting you, but why would they do that? Because that was the official position of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and
yes,
therefore of the world communist movement.
yes, and everybody knew what will happen if you deviate from that official position, especially in the Soviet Union, especially if you're a Jew. So I'm not going to describe in details all these twists and turns, but here we go. Yes, Hitler was left-winger and right-winger at the same time.
Right.
It sounds like a paradox, but it's not. Everything depends on the frame of reference. Frame of reference is a term from physics, right? But I apply it to political philosophy. Everything has to be measured against certain frame of reference. And in physics, there are two major frames of reference, relative and absolute. So relative to Stalin, Hitler was right-winger.
It's that simple.
That's simple. But relative to other points of view, he was a left-winger. So
People
we
don't
have
appreciate how much of inter-regime and inter-party discourse in the Third Reich involved invocations of comradeship and political questions. In other words, politicization of administrative or policy matters. And they used German terms that welded the racial component to the socialism component, but
correct.
in other words, a national comrade. They would refer to national comrades, but it was still this idea of comrades, of the people.
Yes.
They always said Stalin loved the people but hated people.
Yes, that's their standard left-wing lexicon. Nazis, fascists were not a deviation from the overall leftist vector of development. It was logical continuation of the leftist development, started in prehistoric times and emphasized by Karl Marx. Anyway, to conclude this introduction of who the left are and who the right are, I have to state with pretty much mathematical axiomatic precision that the both opposites, left and right, are totalitarian in nature. However, the difference is left argue for the total control of government over the population. Right argue for the total control of population over the government. That's the difference. And what I just said, I describe in my first book as the individual state paradigm or man-state paradigm. And when I published it, it was a lot of discussions. I was invited a lot of podcasts. And One of the smart guys said, okay, Gary, that's very interesting, but it's pretty much cornered into the academic world. What the relationship with the real world, with the real problems? Your abstract definitions of left and right, okay, thank you very much, you're a smart guy. What about application of your idea into the real world? So I start thinking about it, and the first which came to me, it's anti-Semitism. I
Really?
decided to split the entire anti-Semitic world into the left camp and the right camp. And to my big surprise, Ron, unbelievable surprise, I found that the right-wing anti-Semites are minority. They do exist, but they are treated as a marginal group among conservatives. But on the left-hand side, anti-Semitism was and is and probably will be mainstream, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that's why I called my book Left Anti-Semitism, because it covers maybe 95% of all acts of anti-Semitism in the world. And I understand if some leftists are watching us right now, it's not pleasant to observe, to understand, but that's the reality of it. Yes, most of the people who promote, cherish, and practice anti-Semitism in the modern world are left-wingers.
So
And
what's it about, Gary? Why? What is it? Why does it work for them?
okay, it's not just work for them. It's one of their most lovable tools. They were invented. See, anti-Semitism existed through centuries. And then all of a sudden, 1879, German socialist Wilhelm Marr offered a term, anti-Semitism. The term existed in linguistic studies before. He didn't invent it, but he took the term and reformulated it as part of the political strategy. At that time, left-wingers in Germany were fighting for their survival. Elections, they lost elections. Their previous generation of leftists lost everything. Karl Marx, Engels, they lost everything. They were not at the tip of the iceberg. So they had to do something to create, first, reliable voting blocks. Second, win the elections. So what Wilhelm Marr did, and in my book I provide very interesting parallel, Ron, between Wilhelm Marr's invention of anti-Semitism, as we understand it, and Edison. Yes, Edison, who invented the light bulb. Edison invented the light bulb at the same year as anti-Semitism was invented. We know that Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He made it practical.
Right.
Wilhelm Marr didn't invent anti-Semitism. He made it practical tool for political struggle. That's what he did.
That's very good.
And
Very good.
I trace how it all happened. Big portion of the book, it's a description of 19th century German socialists, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Wilhelm Marr, and others who contributed to development of that idea, that anti-Semitism should not be considered a primitive hatred of everything Jewish. No. What Wilhelm Marr actually wrote, and think about it, he said, okay, you spit on a Jew, you burn Jewish house, you rape Jewish woman, you kill a Jew. Good, excellent. I like it, he said. But don't forget that these actions will not increase bank account of the perpetrator, will not help us to win election. It's all fruitless. So he said, and that is his contribution, which is cherished by the left-wingers to his present day. Anti-Semitism in his world has to have two steps. First steps, attack a Jew. But keep in mind, that we have to gain tangible benefits of that attack. We have to always look forward. Brainless attacking of Jew will not lead us anywhere. Countless number of Jew haters existed through the history, and they gained no political power. That was his argument. And when this argument was laid out from 18th century socialists, they say, aha, we found something we can run on. And they continue to run on that idea. So my book is not just an encyclopedia of Jewish grievances. There are so many books on the subject. If you or any other of our viewer go to the Google and type anti-Semitism, I bet you will get millions of links, thousands of books, hundreds of thousands of research papers. Why? Because there is an army of historians who are working on the subject. But my book is not a chronicle of Jewish suffering, because my book, it's better to say what my book is not about than what it's about. So my book does not answer the question, what happened? There is an army of historians who answer that question. My book doesn't answer the question, when did it happen and how it happened? No. As I said, thousands of researchers have access to archives and uncovered how it happened. My book, on the contrary, answers the simple and rarely asked question, why? Why did it happen?
So let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
If Marr was the one who made anti-Semitism pay, made it practical,
yes,
how do we reckon the fact that so many expulsions of Jews involved stripping them of their wealth? Certainly the expulsion from Spain, all from numerous German city-states. I don't know if that was a characteristic of Muslim anti-Semitism, but help me understand how those are different.
Okay. As I said, political anti-Semitism, it's rarely used term political anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is by definition political. Has two steps. First, attack a Jew. Second, gain the benefit, political benefit for the Gentiles. Political benefits for the Gentiles. So how to distinguish between primitive Jew hatred and anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism? If a spear of attack is on a Jew and ends with a Jew, that's a primitive, vulgar Jew hatred. It doesn't lead to any benefit. But if the aim of attack is a Jew, but the actual target is a non-Jewish population, which needs politically organizing, that's anti-Semitism. That's what they do. Wilhelm Marr, Adolf Hitler after him, were classical socialist political organizers. Classical political organizers. Well, in the United States, we also have political organizers. Yeah.
So in other words, during the era of monarchy, you didn't need this.
Yes, you need it. I will give you an example. Yes, you need it. Yeah, I will give you an example. Classical example. 1492, expulsion of Jews from Spain.
Right.
Monarchy. Isabella and Ferdinand. They face the following situation. How much money kingdom has? Almost zero. They just defeated the last enclave of Muslims in Granada. It's a South Spain. And they have no money. They have no money. On top of that, they have terrible situation with their noblemen. Don't forget, it was end of the 15th century. It was not 16th or 17th century. Absolutism never existed. Didn't exist by that time. It will come later in French kingdom, okay? And what they needed to overcome political influence of their noblemen. But confronting them head to head was impossible. They didn't have anything to confront them. So what they devised to do, and it was very clever, they attacked their finances. They wanted to bankrupt them. And the way how to bankrupt them, it's to bankrupt their financiers. And who were bankers for these noblemen in medieval Spain? Jews. So it was go ahead.
But my point is that when I asked you, when I posed that as a challenge to your definition, I thought your response was, we're talking about political benefit. You're saying this was, although there was the payoff of the financial benefit, and I have seen it argued that people underestimate the extent to which the appropriation of Jewish wealth was a major driver of Hitler's policies, because his government was being run into the ground financially by his policies.
That's correct.
But Ferdinand and Isabella didn't have that was good. Gold is good. We know how much the Spanish love gold, but they had a political problem on their hand too. Not in the sense of politics like electoral politics.
No. It was court politics. It was not electoral politics. It was internal to the Spanish kingdom politics. And again, they gained tremendous political benefits by attacking Jews, who in turn bankrupted their political rivals in the court. So what they did, they gained pretty much what they wanted, influence. And by the way, additional note why those two monarchs were very smart. They didn't know what will happen after Jews are expelled. They suspected financial crisis, and they were right. So what they decided to do, they decided to give Christopher Columbus a permission to go to the New World and bring New World riches to the Spain. And that's exactly what he did. So British crown, the Spanish crown was saved after the financial crisis with absence of Jews by Christopher Columbus. Okay? That's what happened. And it shows you one interesting facet of this. Nobody in Spain at that time hated Jews. The word hate does not apply. Likewise, it doesn't apply to well-known anti-Semite like Napoleon. He was real anti-Semite. However, he never hated Jews. He used Jews for his own political purposes. The same was Adolf Hitler. He never personally hated Jews, not particular Jews, no abstract, collectivized Jews. No, he used Jews to reach his political goals.
But what didn't Daniel Goldhagen argue that, I guess the Inquisition did hate Jews. His argument, I think, is that the Inquisition were the first ones to, with the blood, this idea of blood-born evil of the Jews, the racial purity.
Yeah.
But that was the Inquisition. That wasn't Ferdinand and Isabella.
Yes, it was Inquisition because many Jews decided not to live and make a switch. They formally adopted Christianity, and they thought, okay, that's over. Well, that cleverness never worked out, actually. Some of them got imprisoned, some of them burned at the stake, some of them survived. But it never worked the way conversos, how they call them, intended. So Inquisition was designed not as a political or financial tool, but as a religious tool to root out not real Christians, okay? People who pretend to be Christians but practice Judaism or any other religion at home.
So would you say that the Inquisition was an example of Jew hate, not
No,
anti-Semitism?
no. It was not anti-Semitism. It was religious intolerance of
Ah,
anything but Catholicism. Okay? Nobody singled Jews at that time. They single out everybody who are not Catholic.
including Muslims, which a lot of moderns don't appreciate the fact that this is after the Reconquista. There's a reaction to the centuries long Muslim occupation of Spain.
Yes, yes. As a matter of
So
fact, 3 weeks ago, I visited Granada and I visited the palace when the expulsion decree was signed. The throne disintegrated since that time, since 1492. So it's an empty space at the corner of the big palace, sala, whatever. It was interesting. I made very interesting pictures over there.
so now let's move up 600 years.
Okay,
What's going
so
on now?
my book again emphasizes that many anti-Jewish events are simply Jew hatred, but anti-Semitism is not simple Jew hatred or harassment. It's institutionalized enslavement of non-Jews. Think about it. It's because left aims, as I said at the beginning of this recording, left aims at a total control of government over the population. So if they deploy this tool, they say, okay, it helps us to control the non-Jewish population. See, it's a very sick Machiavellian idea. Target Jews to control non-Jews. That's what they did. And it came only after realizing that foundation of that thinking, it's a left-wing thing. So I trace all this stuff moving forward 600 years to Karl Marx. Karl Marx was ethnically Jew, but
He was not raised
he was not
Jewish.
raised as a Jew, but it's not the point. The point that leftists still consider Karl Marx as a prophet of justice. However, this prophet of justice wrote that money is the jealous god of Israel, and under Israel he understood Jews. He criticized bankers because some of them were Jews. He, unfortunately for everybody who followed him, who didn't understand the simple fact that he was not just criticizing Jews or bankers, he criticized capitalistic way of life, very idea of individual success, moral independence, and self-made identity. He was against it. I wrote in my book that for Marx, the Jew was not a person. He was a metaphor for capitalism itself. So,
Absolutely. Sure.
to destroy capitalism, Marx had first to destroy a Jew. And then it started the ball rolling. He never emphasized structurally how anti-Semitism should look like. He was more on a primitive hater. He was equal opportunity hater. He hated everybody. Jews, Protestants, Muslims, he hated everybody. Bankers, doesn't matter. He was equal opportunity hater, as I said. But after him, Karl Marx, Babel, other leaders of the left-wing movement, they decided to use it. And when they met, by the way, Karl Marx met Wilhelm Marx, they didn't establish good relationship because both understand that they are aiming at the very top of the socialist movement in the world, and there is only room for one at the top of the Olympus, socialist Olympus. So they didn't establish good relationship, and they exchange, pretty harsh words against each other because they were enemies on the way to the top. And moving forward another 200 years, Israel was established. And what happened? It happened right after World War II. And the same Joseph Stalin contributed to what we currently call anti-Zionism, because original Zionism, Zionism, it's a special word for the Jewish nationalism. All other nationalism don't have special name. German nationalism doesn't have a special name. It's called German nationalism. British nationalism doesn't have a special name. Only
people are supposed to be loyal to their class, right? I mean, the Great Patriotic War had thrown off that ideological principle.
Yes.
But nonetheless, nationalism in general, I mean, you have all the nations that were part of the Union, the Soviet Union. So nationalism in general was something that Stalin was suspicious of, right?
He was suspicious. But what I'm talking about different nationalism. So if a special word exists for the Jewish nationalism called Zionism, which actually existed for thousands of years without having a name, that's very important. If name is not assigned, if term is not assigned, doesn't mean that event or phenomena doesn't exist. Typical example: electron was discovered in Cavendish laboratory at the end of the 19th century. Question is, what about these other electrons? Did they exist before they got discovered? Of course. So Zionism also existed. Theodor Herzl assigned him a name, Zionism. So immediately after Zionism was popularized, anti-Zionism came to the picture. In the same manner, once British guys propagate their British nationalism, anti-British nationalism appears right away in an instant. So Zionism was asserted at the end of 19th century, and anti-Zionism as anti-Jewish nationalism kicked off right away. Well, here is a situation similar to all other terms in science. Well, it appeared and then it died. Yes, I'm telling you quite a paradoxical thing. Anti-Zionism has died, original one, because nobody at the moment attacks Jews as nationalists. Everybody attacks Jews meaning something else. And that something else was created under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, because new science, or rather pseudoscience, was invented in the Soviet Union after World War II and after creation of Israel. It's called Zionology, okay? So they apply prefix anti to this Zionology, and then they come up with anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism, we know today, has nothing to do with Jewish nationalism or opposition to it. It means simple rejection of the state of Israel. Simple like that. And of course, it has a lot of pre-requirements. I always hear, okay, yeah, it's you say it's anti-Zionism or anti-Semitism, but it's primitive hatred. No, nobody hates state of Israel in the same manner as hating other entity or other people. They hate it for quite different reasons. because they want to gain political benefits, educating their population to hate that distant object, size of New Jersey where we live, hate it, and organize again around this unified idea. That's what they do. Hope I explain it in a proper way. But again, for them, Israel, it's a phenomena used for internal political battles. Another explanation. In order to hate somebody, you need object of the hate, right? You cannot hate something abstract and non-existent, okay? You cannot hate planet Mars because it's somewhere, okay? I hate Mars. No, no, no. There are many countries where Jews don't exist, but anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism prosper. Take Pakistan. No,
Right.
no one Jew ever stepped on that soil. Yet they practice that day and night. They live by that. They win elections by that. They keep population under control, and I understand them. I understand rulers of all those stands. You know, Pakistan, other stands. Stand means country. They are presiding over inbred population. There are scientific research which says what percentage of inbred population, and I believe Pakistan is leading. Gaza is second or third place. Keeping inbred population under control requires extraordinary methods. You cannot reason with those people. They don't understand reason. You can only coerce them. That's why in the 6th century, new religion was invented to keep inbred population, unmanaged population, uncontrolled population under control. Islam has approximately 15% of religious teaching. In other religions, percentage is quite different. In Judaism, it's quite opposite. It's like 80% of Judaism dedicated to the relationship with God, and only 20% deals with, day-to-day life, all those 613 rules, whatever. You know the rules. Islam is quite different. Most of Islam, I calculated approximately by analyzing Quran, at about 5/6 of Islam, it's a secular, and about 1/6 of Islam it's religious, which teaches its followers to deal with God, obey God, love God, understand God. But most of their so-called religion has nothing to do with God. It's a manual how to keep militant camp of bandits, under certain order, because Muhammad himself was the raider, attacking caravans. So he need to keep his bandits under control, and Islam was a perfect to keep unmanageable people manageable.
So, Gary, I'm really enjoying listening to this because clearly you've really thought through these issues. And I'm gonna definitely order the book. I regret that I wasn't able to read it before we spoke. When we talked about having you on the show, you were very eager, and plus Passover's coming. Who has, the more we can get done, the better. Any ideas for dealing with what we're seeing in 2025, 2026?
Well, the second part of my book deals with two subjects. First, definition of anti-Semitism, because proper definition does not exist. So I approach that program with the same axiomatic precision as the previous book. And how to deal with anti-Semitism, how to defeat anti-Semitism. As for the definition of anti-Semitism, I emphasize 10 points definition must confirm. Two of them are unusual. For example, definition of anti-Semitism must include Jewish anti-Semitism as part of that definition.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this phenomena exists and we cannot ignore it. So
Definitely.
the definition must not center on non-Jews. It has to center on everybody who uses anti-Semitism for political purposes.
Right, absolutely.
Okay? Second, the definition of anti-Semitism has opened the door for the eradication of anti-Semitism, because if you truly uncover the essence of it, it shows you the way how to get rid of it. So my definition of anti-Semitism is, and I'm reading from the book, anti-Semitism is a political weaponization of animosity toward the superposition of Jewish achievements of the past, present, and future. That definition is radically different from existing definitions, and I understand that. Keep in mind that gatekeepers of the publishing industry, gatekeepers of many universities in the world are left-wingers. And they don't allow Holocaust to be treated as a left-wing enterprise. They would like to isolate Third Reich, Adolf Hitler, Anne Frank as the only thing which happened from 1933 to 1945. Why? Because being isolated, it allows them to distance themselves from the events. They say, oh, it was done by Nazis, without realizing that there are many people like me and you who understand that Nazis means National Socialists.
Right.
Okay? By the way, Germans themselves called National Socialists Nazi Sozi. But it was too long. They dropped Sozi. They start calling them Nazi, and it spread. So the socialistic motives of Nazis got abandoned, forgotten, unfortunately. Now, that definition, as I said, opens potential door for eradicating of anti-Semitism. Again, eradicating of anti-Semitism means, in my world, depriving non-Jews acquiring political benefits of attacking Jews. So, my approach is, we should not concentrate on stopping attacks on Jews. That's a fight we will lose because number of Jews in the world too small. However, what we can do, we can prevent non-Jews acquire tangible benefits of attacking Jews. And there are multiple ways to do that. And one of the unexpected supporting cases came from Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winner in economics. He was he had a lecture in one of the universities, I believe it was in Australia, and he said that the major problem we have to solve, what we have to do is we have to make sure that bad people will do good decisions. They will be forced not to do bad, but to do good things, because the political situations will not demand bad things to happen. Again, it's easy to say how to approach that. And I have to revert back to my definitions of left and right. If anti-Semitism we are dealing today is primarily on the left, we have to distance our society from the leftist ideology. We have to move to societies with more freedom. Free societies do not require anti-Semitism because it's free society by definition. It doesn't require isolating a group against which everybody else will unite. Free society does not require that. Only unfree societies or people who aim to create unfree societies want to use anti-Semitism.
I think that says it all. Freedom is good for everyone.
Freedom,
as we say, it's good for the Jews.
It's good for everybody.
Including the Jews.
Yes.
That's the book, Left Anti-Semitism. Gary, great talking to you.
Nice to talk to you, and I'm very glad that you invited me.
Well, nice to meet a neighbor. And I wish you success with the book and with whatever your next project is, and as well, and a sweet and meaningful Passover.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for culminating, folks.